Hi, welcome to Diecast QT. I'm QT, and in this video I'm going to be restoring and customizing the forklift truck from Matchbox. I've got two of these, and one's in better condition than the other, and I've decided to go with the one with the broken forks. I recently got a 3D printer, and one of the first challenges I set myself was to produce some new forks for this forklift truck. As you can see on the intact one that's coming around on the turntable now, there's a lot of detail in these forks, and in terms of the measurements, we're talking not much in the way of tolerances to be able to make them fit inside that yellow housing there. So it took about 3 goes before I got it right, and as I'm planning on putting this in as part of my new diorama, which is a scrapyard, the forks will be designed to carry a car, a very lightweight car, but a car nonetheless. So they're a little bit different from the design on this one. And you can see the fork that I designed right there on the right. I didn't bother recording drilling out the post because it's not much to look at. And as you can see, that's the Matchbox Superfast forklift truck number 15, made in 1972. So the main casting there houses the plastic forklift truck forks, which I'm going to need to replace. And fortunately, once you've got the base off, they will just slide out. So replacing these was probably the trickier thing, so I designed it in Tinkercad, measured with some calipers, got them exactly right, and this was the end result. I've got several of these that snapped whilst being built, but this is the one that survived the process and the one which is on the finished model. I've added some extra details which weren't on the original, and as you can see, it's a perfect match in terms of the size and fittings on the back. And annoyingly, while it fits all snugly right now, after it's all been painted and clear coated, it doesn't fit so snugly. So the end result is that it is kind of fixed in place, but I don't mind so much because it's just a display piece. So taking the casting and pieces apart, we've got this rubber grip here which lets the fork assembly kneel, so it rocks backwards and forwards, as well as the forks going up and down on the original model. I have always had trouble getting the axles out of these plastic suspension rigs, so bear with me while we watch me struggle trying to get free. It eventually comes out with a slightly bent axle, which I attempt to straighten because I intend to reuse these, because axle tubes aren't really an option on this one. So there's our pieces, 7 in total, 8 if you include the steering wheel. So getting off the paint was boiling water and caustic soda, my new preferred method of paint removal. Always wear a mask, goggles and suitable protection whilst doing this. It's quite hazardous. So I left that for a few minutes and even gave it another treatment afterwards to try and shift the paint. I've had trouble with red paint in the past that's been used by Leslie, and I suspect it's this particular type of paint they use because it just didn't want to come off. So that's as good as it gets on the first pass of paint removal. It came off, the yellow came off very easily. So I'm going to switch to the Dremel for the remainder of this paint removal. So on with a steel wire brush and massively sped up footage so you don't have to endure what I had to endure. Getting into the nooks and crannies on this was a bit tricky. So most of the paint that was stuck inside the nooks and crannies I had to get out with a dentist pick. So having given the casting a covering of grey metal primer, we move to the paint. And the first attempt was the medium yellow from Vallejo, which I've not had much joy with in the past, but I'm prepared to give it the benefit of the doubt. So it goes on okay, but there was a little bit of kind of bubbling on the surface, which I wasn't particularly happy with. And I left it to dry and tried to kind of fix it, but ended up going back to the drawing board, stripping it and repriming. And then on the second attempt we went with some Tamiya Lemon Yellow, which is a bit trickier because you have to mix it with thinners, but it tends to go on okay. I think because it's been some time since I used this, I actually made this a bit too thin, and on the first coat the primer was kind of showing through on the edges. It went on nicely, just like the Vallejo stuff did, only this time without the bubbling on the surface. In retrospect, I think I had the pressure on my airbrush turned up too high. So that was coat 1. And then after that I did another coat of Tamiya Yellow and then another coat of Vallejo Medium Yellow because it looked a little bit too bright. And that was the end result after it dried. So I made some decals which were a vague approximation of the ones that were on the original red model. I wanted to make them look a bit more modern, even though that particular company hasn't been in business since the 70s. Showing off my new decal station there. I told you I'd got a 3D printer. The weird thing about that decal, it went on and just refused to move. That's rather unusual. Good job it went on right first time. And I didn't bother filming the reverse side, but that went on quite well as well. So now, as this is going to be part of a diorama, I need it to not look brand new, so what I'm doing now is using some Nuln Oil to kind of make it look a bit used. Initially I was going to go with a kind of vaguely new appearance, and I still want it to look sort of new, but something that's new but neglected in terms of no one ever washes it. So I'm using two brushes here, one for detail and the other one which is kind of an old brush that's got a bit of a stippled end on it. And you'll see I start using that, which is to apply dirt effects. So I'm just using neat Nuln Oil here just to make it look dirty. So I'm not brushing it away, I'm just leaving spots of it all over the place. hand painted the seat in Tamiya flat black to get a kind of leather appearance. Not that it would be leather, probably moulded plastic. Just a bit of a wet brush to kind of water down that null on the dashboard there to make it look like it's been rained off a little. And now I'm moving to some weathering powders. I think these are Rebel weathering powders. Just dark earth. So I'm just going to put some mud around where people would be walking or climbing. And that will all get sealed in when I apply some varnish. Now the wheels, I did a straight paint with flat black and then touched up with some flat aluminium, and then went over with some dark earth weathering powders to age them up a bit. They look better than they do in HD. And as for the forks, well, they got a treatment in with primer first of all, then I went over with a dark grey Sharpie, a silver Sharpie, and finally a little bit of a solution I've made from white vinegar and wire wool, which has created real rust, which I've painted a solution of that onto them to give the impression of forks that have been lifting lots of rusty things. So let's have this put together at long last. Everything's been covered in some matte varnish. Because again, this needs to look real, not like a die-cast model. And here's where I find out that varnish on varnish makes for a pretty tight fit. So once I've got it in there, I don't think that's ever going to move again. And you'll remember my struggle getting these wheels out. Repeat it again, getting them back in again. And watch as those front wheels fall out as I'm positioning the back. Click the base in. Finish up with an M2 hex screw. And finishing touch, popping the steering wheel. Let me know what you think of it.